Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for hopping on the webinar. We are right at the top of the hour here, so we're going to get going. Just a quick housekeeping thing or two before we get started. If you look over on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a questions area and a chat area. We are in listen-only mode, which means that you can hear us, but we are not able to hear you. That's just a little bit easier when you have a large number of attendees on a webinar. So, but we do still want to hear from you. As you have questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to enter them in over there on the right-hand side, type them into the chat or the questions area, and we'll collect those as we go throughout, and we reserve plenty of time at the end for questions and answers. And we do want to hear those from you. So again, keep your eye on the right-hand side. If you have a question, please enter it there. So with that, we're going to get started. Let me turn this over to Chris Lean for some introductions, and we'll make things happen.
All right, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to attend this important web seminar. My name is Chris Lean. I'm president of BCC Software, and I'm joined here with Sean Ryan, vice president of product strategy. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Chris. Good to be on.
All right, and you know, Sean, every time I see this picture of you with that smile on your face, it just makes me think that you're up to something. You're up to something now, aren't you, Sean?
I am up to something. We're always up to something. You know, we spend a lot of time listening to customers and stuff, and we're pretty excited and pretty proud about the Compliance Plus announcement we have here today. You know, we announced it a little bit Information Exchange, our user conference, about a month ago, and then a larger market announcement last week. And we have had terrific feedback and terrific success. So, you know, we're excited to take some time here and share a little bit of information about what's involved with Compliance Plus. But maybe, Chris, get us started by talking a little bit about some of the basics of address quality that we're going to build on here with this bundle.
All right, thanks, Sean. So a couple things, folks. I mean, right now, for mail preparation, everybody's using some kind of an automated solution, right? We're all doing mail preparation. We've been doing it quite a while. And, you know, we've had a lot of effort that has been invested in fixing address quality. But you know what? In today's world, tools like CAS certified software and N2A link as a pre-mailing move update method, they've become table stakes. Everybody's doing this, right? Whether you're doing 18-month or 48-month look back for the N2A link, you know, we're doing CAS, we're doing N2A link. It's what the Postal Service requires. And we've reached a point now, in my opinion, where it's become table stakes. It's just expected that you're doing that. And the problem is that really there are still big problems with address quality, and the Postal Service is now starting to put a lot of pressure on mailers to reduce undeliverable as addressed mail. It's costing the Postal Service still billions of dollars, which in effect is costing the industry billions of dollars. And the Postal Service, as they continue to expand and try to capture market share of parcel delivery, they're finding that address quality is really critical for them to exact delivery of parcels. And so they're putting a lot of pressure on mailers to reduce UAA mail, far more than I've recalled in the last recent years. And to help the industry understand the problem of undeliverable addressed mail, they've enhanced the mailer scorecards. And I'm sure you've seen these if you're a mailing service provider and are keeping an eye on it. But those mailer scorecards are exposing address quality deficiencies. And it's not just you as an MSP that's looking at those, your customers now see that. The Postal Service is trying to expose address quality deficiencies across the entire supply chain. They're also starting the CAS Cycle O process. Now, it's going to happen on August 1st of 2020, and I know that seems like it's long in the future, but it's not. It's looming ahead, and BCC Software has been involved in this with User Group 5 and MTAC, and there's going to be a lot of changes with CAS Cycle O. A lot of adjustments to the DPV product and address quality. Again, the Postal Service is really focused on improving address quality, and secondary addresses are a primary concern, especially for parcels. If you don't have a secondary address and it's required for a parcel, you could be facing an assessment per package as a result of that. And even though you might say, well, I'm letters and flats, Chris, that doesn't apply to me for parcels, you need to be concerned about it for two reasons. One, your customer expects you to get that mail piece in the mail receptacle, okay? Not in the lobby of the high-rise building, not somewhere in the complex. They want it actually delivered to the customer. And so that's important whether your letters or flats. And the second is, there's a very good chance, as the Postal Service requires secondary addresses for parcels, it's not too far-fetched to think they'll extend that to letters and flats. So we may have been able to ignore or kind of not worry too much about secondary addresses. We can't do that anymore. We've really got to focus on that for our customers, for our business, for everybody to make sure that that mail gets there. And it's all about making sure every mail piece counts. Look, direct marketers have a number of different ways that they can communicate, many, many different channels. We still believe, and I think the numbers reflect it, direct mail is still your best bet for direct marketing. In fact, the Direct Marketing Association, their fact book just came out. It's over 5% response rate for direct mail. And so direct marketers are expecting attribution and a higher ROI for direct mail. So if you're not focused on ROI and you're not trying to find ways to go beyond just checking the box on the postage statement to be compliant, you're really missing out on an opportunity, and you may be left behind compared to what your competition is looking to do. So we want to help you out with that. And Sean, I think you've got an opportunity here for people to go beyond just being compliant.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's a great sort of overview of the table stakes, right? So, but it's that last piece that I think is the most important. You know, as a mailing service provider, your customers aren't paying you necessarily to be compliant. The reason they're running that campaign is because they want those pieces delivered. Right. They're expecting a result. And so compliance solutions are good and they're good table stakes, but what can you do to offer them even better service, get them better results? And that's where we come up with this Compliance Plus bundle. So first and foremost, I want you to think of it as an upgrade to your current compliance solution, to your current NCOA link processing. And that's how we've really put this bundle together. So what Compliance Plus is it's a single pass through some advanced CAS processing, address resolution service, proprietary change of address, and then finally also through NCOA link. And Chris is going to talk a little bit more in a minute about some of the details of what each of those processes do. Let me give you kind of a high-level overview about how this gets incrementally more pieces delivered. So the first step in the process is to run it through our proprietary CAS engine. So for those of you that are Mail Manager customers, the address engine that's inside of Mail Manager is the Postal Service's address matching engine, which does a really good job of giving a strict match to what the United States Postal Service expects. Here at BCC Software, though, we've developed our own address matching engine, which is available in some of our products, but is a little bit more aggressive and is able to get some additional results all on its own, right? And so we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about the value of, put some hard numbers behind what's the value of getting additional standardized addresses. And it's pretty startling. So from there, we take it through Address Resolution Service. This is a service that we've offered as a standalone for a while now. What it does is it uses industry source data to do a couple of things. It can standardize some additional addresses. Again, Chris is going to take you through a couple examples of how it fixes things like transposed entries. And also appends apartment numbers. You heard Chris talking about secondary address becoming a primary concern. Certainly that's true for parcels. But again, even for something like marketing mail, your customers aren't paying you to get that piece thrown into a bundle in the lobby of a high-rise. They're paying you because they want that piece in the recipient's hands. From there, we take it through proprietary change of address, which is a little bit similar in concept to NCOA, except that it relies on industry data. That's important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's estimated that only 60% of the moves in the United States are filed with the Postal Service. That means 40% of the people are moving without informing the Postal Service. That number seems to be increasing a little bit as millennials start to follow their own pattern. If you've seen Chris speak at a couple of recent industry shows, you've heard him talk about his Millennials on the Move presentation. And he'll talk a little bit more about that data and an example in a minute. But it's also able to look back 60 months, whereas your NCOA link is able to look back up to 48 months. The PCOA is able to go back an additional year to try and find moves, which is really important in connecting spots in things like chain moves. And then finally, we do move it through the NCOA link 48-month service. This, of course, is the highest source. It is the most authoritative source. And it's what you're already doing today. And it is still required for compliance, which this Compliance Plus solution still does satisfy. The point in all that, and we'll talk a little bit more detail about how we execute on some of that, is that in this bundle, there's more value for you and there's better results for your customers, right? So what does that mean? Let's take more value for you as a starting point. That bundle of services we just went through at the pricing that we'll talk about here later in the webinar is not something you could cobble together on your own outside of, by sourcing all those services individually. If you were to source all of those, you would not be able to come anywhere close to the bundled price that we've come up with. So it really is, it's adding a ton more value to your current NCOA subscription by upgrading to this bundle. One of the things that allows you to do is increase your revenue per job. You can charge a higher data processing fee and promise and deliver on much higher campaign results. I'll take you through a specific example of that in a couple of slides that helps put some additional context around that. It allows you to get more value by differentiating yourself from your competition, which should help you attract additional customers, retain the customers you have as they start to look around and they monitor their response rates and they start to wonder, is there something better out there? You'll be able to provide them a level of service that other people aren't. And then sort of related to that, especially as it comes to retaining dollars, is the improved results you can deliver are going to hold and potentially increase direct mail's wallet share with your customer. Your marketing buyer has other avenues available to get their message out, digital being one of the primary ones. And digital certainly has a place, but as they look at, can I save money by shifting the spend over to digital? Yeah, probably, but are you going to get the same results? So the better job you do delivering results, the better job you do helping them hold that wallet share. So speaking of your customers, there are better results for your customers, right? Absolutely. And we're going to talk about a detailed example of that. Number one is the ability to reduce undeliverable as addressed mail. Typically the Postal Service says on average you see about 5% UAA mail in a typical mailing. Reducing that, of course, increases delivery. That is one of the things when we announced this at Information Exchange, our user conference last month, was one of the first things is, boy, I have people ask me a lot of questions. How do I reduce my undeliverable mail? It sounds like this would do that, and that's absolutely true. Of course, when you reduce undeliverable mail, you increase the response rate because you get more pieces in people's hands, plain and simple. And again, we'll talk through an example of that. We're also going to talk through an example of how it helps reduce postage. For most folks, postage is a pass-through. You just pass that cost through, but by reducing postage to them, you're providing better value to them. And it's not just about the reduced postage on the individual pieces that you improve with Compliance Plus. You can uplift the postage savings across the mailing. And Chris will take you through a specific example of that. And then finally, the opportunity to retain and recover contacts. People that maybe get lost in chained moves or somewhere along the way, and your customer doesn't even necessarily know that they've lost them. Maybe they expect that piece is getting delivered. Or maybe they know that person's gone and they want to recover it. So this is kind of a high-level overview of where there's more value for you and better results to your customers. But Chris, maybe let's dig in and start talking through some specific examples. Maybe we'll start by talking about this concept of retaining and recovering some contacts.
I think that's a great idea, and in particular with recovering. When we talk about mail and we talk about using mail, a lot of companies that are continuing to rely heavily upon mail are nonprofits. And for a nonprofit mailer, it's all about donations. Yeah, postage discounts are nice. They look at the discounts. They kind of rely on the discounts, but it's about donations, folks. It's about delivery and donations, not the discounts. So here we have an example of a nonprofit mailer. They come to me, I'm the service provider, and they say, hey, look, I have a list of clients, and for some reason, one of my donors stopped sending me money, stopped responding to me, and we're not sure why. And it's been a while, but this is the latest address that we could find for this particular person. Ryan C. at 1600 Elmwoods, Rochester, New York. Now, when we look at this, and a lot of you are address quality experts at this point, you can look at that address and say, well, yeah, Chris, I see there's problems with it right now, right? You've got Ryan C. Well, there's an issue with that from the name, right? The first name is mostly abbreviated, and obviously Ryan would probably be the last name. So I should really switch those. So it should be like C. Ryan, probably like Chris Ryan or something. 1600 Elm Space Woods. Is it really Elm Woods like that? Should it be one word? And is it an avenue, a street, a circle? We don't know. Rochester, yep, that's a city, last line, and that's a beautiful picture of Rochester in the background there. But New York, is that the city? Is that the state? Hard to say, and of course, we're missing the zip plus 4. And without the zip plus 4, we're not going to get anywhere. in terms of timely, predictable, and ultimate delivery. So we're going to take this address and let's start running it through the tool sets that the Postal Service provides through companies like BCC software with our CAS certified technology. Now, these are the USPS compliant address quality solutions. When the Postal Service says, hey, did you follow the DMM and my move update rules? Yep, here's the stack of what those are. And it starts with CAS certified software to standardize the address. That will give me a ZIP+4 if the primary number falls within a particular range of addresses that the Postal Service has identified as potentially deliverable. But when I start validating that address and look at LAX link, for example, to see if the address has been converted from a roll route to street style, or I look at DPV to see if it's a delivery point validated address that the Postal Service actually goes to. Maybe it's a business address and the business name is filed with the Postal Service on a very small list, a database list that we provide, or that the Postal Service provides that we make available to our customers. Maybe I can provide the suite number or the secondary number for that. But chances are that what was given to me as a ZIP+4 with the standardized part of it may be changed or taken away during the validation. And if I don't have a ZIP+4 or the right ZIP+4 after my validation step of compliant tools, I can't call N2A link. I need a 9-digit zip code, the right 9-digit zip code for the old address to be able to unlock the data in N2A link to find out where that customer moved. And if I can't get an N2A link hit, I can't get the A&K link for the addressee not known to be able to look further back, see are they in the 18-month or 48-month database. And then finally, yes, there is this thing out there called ACS, Address Change Service with the Postal Service. It's a nice post-mailing solution, but that has limitations too. That's dependent on what we put on the address. So you need to make sure that you're at least following the compliance solutions, but there's limitations that go along with that. And let me show you what I mean. This is a screenshot out of Mail Manager. And so I've got my input address on the left, Chris Ryan, 1600 Elm Space Woods, Rochester, New York. Mail Manager forces me to put in the 2-character state code. So I've already kind of corrected that in just entering the address. But when I tell Mail Manager to standardize and run the address through that stack of CAS certified tools, the validation and standardization tools, it comes back and says there is a problem with this address. First of all, the DPV code of D and the footnote of AAN1, right off the bat, is going to tell me there's a secondary number missing. This person, Chris Ryan, lives in a building that happens to be a high-rise or a multifamily dwelling unit. And because you didn't give me the apartment number for where Chris Ryan lives, I'm going to give you the default high-rise match of return code 32, okay? Now, that's going to give me a ZIP+4 of 3862 to go along with the zip code. But folks, as I said before, that's not what your customer paid you to do in sorting and preparing this mail piece. That doesn't get the mail piece to Chris Ryan. That puts the mail piece on a table in the lobby that Chris might have been ignoring for the last several months. Maybe that's why he hasn't replied, right? So this just by itself, maybe is going to get you a discount, not going to get you a donation. So we really need to go further and start trying to figure out, well, is there a way that we can figure out what apartment number Chris lives in? Now, using Mail Manager, I can interrogate postal data. And this is a screenshot right out of it where I can look at that. And I can see for the ZIP+4 add-ons on the left and the large rectangle on the left side of the screen, they can vary. It could be from 3801 to 3840 to 3862. There's a number of different 4-digit add-on codes. And it all depends on, well, are we talking about the unit of the office, the OFC? Are we talking about an apartment number on the first floor or the second floor? Are we talking about the lobby? So there's different things. Now, at this point, maybe I could guess, right? And I could say, well, maybe Chris Ryan lives on, I don't know, apartment 1. I'll just pick the first one. Okay, I'll get a little bit better ZIP+4. But again, is that what my customer paid me to do? They want donations, not the wrong place. So at this particular point, I'm really kind of stuck because the Postal Service doesn't give me an apartment, a pen, or an apartment link product. Now, secondary addresses, as I said before, are really important. In fact, I think they're becoming a primary issue. Change of address matching, as I said before, requires a ZIP+4. Not just any ZIP+4, though. It has to be the one that matches what the old address was. If Chris Ryan lives in an apartment, then he would have filed a change of address, if he did, using the ZIP+4 for the floor that he's on. okay? He wouldn't use the zip+4 or the lobby when he filed his change of address. So if he put the floor that he's on and all I have is the zip+4 for the lobby, folks, I can't find him. I won't be able to find where Chris Ryan is. Also, parcel deliveries have to have that secondary address. If it's a letter or a catalog, fine. Maybe, Newman or Cliff Clavin's going to look at the different mailboxes and maybe put that piece of mail in the right one for Chris Ryan on the row of different mailboxes. But I doubt that he's going to go out of his way to try and walk up and down the halls to find out, well, which apartment number is Chris in, knocking on the doors as he goes back and forth, right? That's not going to happen. So the Postal Service, unfortunately, can't help me. But there is a way to go beyond compliance solutions and leverage industry data like Advanced Address Resolution Service. With the Postal Service, they have this thing called AEC, Address Element Correction. That can maybe help with some things, but it can't fix every address, and it definitely can't give you apartment numbers for people. But industry-provided addresses can look at the name of the address and do some additional data scrubbing that CAS-certified software wouldn't help you be able to do. Here's an example of what I mean. When we leverage this Compliant Plus data, I'm going to use the name to search and correct sort of these ambiguous addresses and even fix things that CAS can't even touch. So we'll start with the transposed primary number example. If I've got John Smith at 231 Main Street, Rochester, New York, Main Street doesn't run into the 200s like that. So CAS-certified software would say, sorry, you're not going to get a zip+4, and in fact, that's all I get is a 14623. My consolation prize is maybe a 5-digit zip count, but think of all the things I've missed out on. I've missed out on all the automation capabilities. I've missed out on sortation. I've missed out on the power of full-service intelligent mail barcodes. I've missed out on reconnecting with my customer, and I'm not going to be able to find them when they move. By looking at John Smith's name and searching Main Street using industry-provided data, I can see that, oh yeah, John does live on Main Street in one and only one location, 123. Clearly that was transposed. I changed the primary number and boom, all of a sudden now I end up with the proper zip+4. This is going to get me all kinds of discounts and an opportunity to reconnect. Let's say instead that 123 Main Street's a high-rise, and my input address, again, is John Smith, 123 Main Street, but it's a high-rise, and I don't have the secondary apartment number. Well, as I shared before, the Postal Service can't give you apartment numbers. So in this case, at best, maybe you'll get the default zip for the lobby. Maybe you won't get anything at all. In this case, again, I'm still stuck in first gear with a 5-digit zip code. But if I run an address resolution service, it's going to look in that multifamily dwelling unit, this apartment, this fourplex or whatever, and it's going to see, yep, John Smith's there, but he happens to live in apartment 10. And when I put that as the secondary address, all of a sudden, boom, now I've gone from first gear to fifth, and I'm speeding along with a zip+4 and an add-on code of 1620. That's going to get me discounts, and that's going to help me find John Smith when he files a change of address with the U.S. Postal Service. So let's go back to Chris Ryan. So I went beyond compliance software, and I'm going to use Compliant Plus software and use an address resolution service. And I was able to find that, yes, Chris Ryan lives at apartment 6. When he was in the apartment, he bought a 60-inch TV, put it on the wall, and sent in his warranty registration card, and that's how we picked up he's actually in apartment 6 when he filled that out. That gives me the chance to put 3840 as my proper 4-digit zip+4 code, and note that all my other codes, my return code, my DPV code and stuff, everything's green light. I'm ready to speed along. But does Chris Ryan still actually live there? So let's pause for a moment and remember, when our customer asked us to reach out to this donor, they wanted a donation. At this particular point, folks, I've gotten the maximum discounts I'm going to get for Chris Ryan, right? But that's not what my customer wanted me to do. They wanted a donation. The problem is Chris Ryan didn't file a change of address with the U.S. Postal Service. Chris Ryan maybe was a millennial who just doesn't fill out a change of address, or wasn't thinking about that, or he was so excited to get out of there that he left and didn't tell anyone. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. Now there's a whole number, dozens of return codes for Eventually Link, and I know a lot of you download our document that helps you decode what those numbers are. But sort of jumping ahead of that, what we find here is that Chris Ryan left and didn't tell anyone. Moved, left, no address. MLNA, the footnote code of 02 that says Chris did not file a change of address with the Postal Service. And so now, unfortunately, with a USPS compliant solution, I'm definitely at a dead end. There's no way I can find Chris. The Postal Service has no idea. The address maybe is complete and correct, but now I'm done. I'll never be able to find this guy, which is compliant software. But by going with a Compliant Plus solution, I can leverage industry data like PCOA and maybe find Chris filed a change of address or notified a company where he moved but didn't tell the Postal Service. And it's estimated that 40% of the physical change of addresses that are happening are not filed in a timely manner or maybe at all with the Postal Service. And as I said before, millennials are very different, we're finding, than Gen X and baby boomers. The OIG, Office of the Inspector General, recently published a report on millennials, and they found that they're very different move situations than with other generations. They don't often think of sharing their new address or change of address with the Postal Service, but they definitely tell people that they want to stay connected with where they moved. And in this case, Chris Ryan did notify the magazine subscription, his magazine provider of his subscription, because he wanted to continue to get that magazine for him. And so that's how we ended up finding Chris Ryan. He told the subscriber or the publisher where he's at. We end up picking that up through our PCOA service, and now we can find Chris Ryan. PCOA also helps with chain moves, and Sean, I think, mentioned that before. When somebody moves from point A to B to C to D, if they move in that succession like that, maybe they file a change of address with the Postal Service each one of those times. But if they forget or choose not to file something, it breaks the chain. Okay? If you give me A, I might find B, but if you didn't file a change of address with B, I'll never be able to pick them up again when we get to the last address. PCOA can sometimes fill in the gap, reconnect those linkages. And by using PCOA before NCOA link, we can find that reconnects the chains, and now we can start using chain moves with NCOA link. So as kind of recapping the whole process, we started off with an address that's definitely got issues with it. I think you can see that visually. Using compliant software, USPS compliant software, we were able to get discounts. We were able to get a good, complete, and correct address. But you know what? That's not what our customer asked us to do. The discounts are nice, but they wanted donations. So by going with a Compliant Plus solution, we found that Chris Ryan doesn't live in the apartments anymore. He bought a beautiful house over in Woodside Drive in Penfield, and he's happy. He's got his magazine, and now he's got donations he's ready to make to my customer.
So Chris, what a great sort of in-depth example of how Compliance Plus can take an address that a compliant solution alone can't get to. So let's take a minute now and talk about what's the impact of that potentially, what's the impact of more good addresses on a mailing, and specifically to the mail owner, right? So to those of you on the phone, to your customers. So here I've roughed out a quick example. I'll take you through it. So we're talking about a hypothetical 10,000 piece mailing. In some of the testing we've done with some of our customers that were at Information Exchange, which again is our user conference, there's a shameless plug, it's in August, I hope you're there next year. You know, we announced this initially there before the larger market announcement last week. And we did some testing with some of those customers' lists, and we found about a 40% uplift versus running compliance, just CAS and NCOA alone. We saw some that were a little bit less. We saw some that were something like 90%, which I think is overselling it a little bit in terms of what's typical. It's possible, but it's overselling a little bit in terms of what's typical. But 30–40% is a pretty good conservative uplift. We've seen that number over and over again. So in our example, we're saying that a typical response is worth $75 to our mailer. You know, it's more for some, less for others, but we're just grabbing an example here. And then there's your 5.1% response rate that Chris and I have mentioned. That is the DMA stat, as Chris shared. That is the response rate on a house mailing list, so on your customer mail list. So let me take you through the compliance example here. What you would typically do, you run CAS and NCOA. Let's say you charge a $50 data processing fee. Now, I recognize that some of you don't show that discreetly. Some folks roll that all into one fee for the mailing. Some folks charge a discrete data processing line item. Some folks might charge a couple of different line items on it per thousand. But at the end of the day, you're charging something, let's say it's $50 on this. Your print cost for those 10,000 pieces, you tell them, look, $5,000. Now, typically, and your customer may not be aware of this yet, but only 9,500 of those pieces are getting delivered. Postal Service's stats shared that 5% of the mail submitted is UAA, it's undeliverable as addressed. So depending on the type of mail and what you've done, it either is returned or goes in the garbage. They don't even attempt it, you never see it. With the increased visibility into the mailer scorecard, remember now the mail owner is going to see that. And so with our 9,500 pieces that got delivered and our 5.1% response rate, we've gotten 485 responses that's going to be worth $36,300. You see the number there, right? So a little over $36,000. Now, by running Compliance Plus, you're able to charge a higher data processing fee. And whether you elect to show that or not show that, roll it in, however you do it, you certainly can justify an increased fee. And how do you do that? So you've got the same print cost, but now you're going to get 9,700 pieces delivered, another 200 pieces delivered, which yields an additional 10 responses. So for this customer, the value of that is an additional $740 uplift to the mail owner, right? They've sold or had revenues or donations or subscriptions or whatever it is of an additional $740 attributed to this mailing, as opposed to had you just done the compliance solution. Because again, what your customer, the reason they're coming to you is because they want those pieces in the hands of the people on the list, not because they're trying to check the compliance box. And so by doing this, you can see that you're able to easily justify increasing your data processing fee because you're more than paying that back to these customers. Now that's based just on the response rate itself. But Chris, there's also the potential for postage savings there that goes beyond just the increase to that one mail piece.
Absolutely. And, again, a lot of you know how pre-sort works, right? I'm going to group these pieces that have common zip codes, common carrier routes, and so forth. And it's all about sort of a cascaded approach or a waterfall approach of grouping and sorting these various zip plus 4s. And so Compliance Plus is going to impact the zip plus 4, and in some cases, it can impact it in very interesting ways. So going back to the compliance side of the screen, mailing list 10,000 names, tray 51, which, further down in the process, tray 51, as I'm going through that, ends up with 147 barcoded pieces to zip code 14607 on a local SCF. They get the AADC rate, all those pieces in there, of 0.378, okay? The next tray in the sequence has what we call the tail of the mail, sort of that leftover part, has 400 non-barcoded pieces. Non-barcoded, they didn't get, the zip plus 4, they didn't get all the benefits, they get a consolation prize of a slight discount, but their pre-sorted price is 51 cents a piece. When I run Compliance Plus, it has an impact on a couple of things. First of all, tray 51 now ends up with 162 barcode pieces. So I end up with more barcode pieces. I'm pulling from tray 52 into tray 51 some of those pieces that now have been upgraded as a result of Compliance Plus. And because I've added more pieces into tray 51, now all of a sudden I've opened up an opportunity by strategically adding, that one or those two pieces. And you folks know how this works. Sometimes you look at that bundle, it's like, man, if I just had one more piece, I could get into that 5-digit rate. I can get into that. Well, that's what happens here. We move from the AADC rate to a 5-digit rate. We're getting a 3 cent per piece savings for the 147 that were already in that tray. So the ones that were already in that tray now got the added benefit of the pieces that were affected from Compliance Plus, so they get impacted. 0.132 per piece on the uplift from the pre-sorted price, and tray 52 ends up with fewer non-barcoded pieces, 385. So a tangible impact on both tray 51 and tray 52, and the nice thing about it is that there's incremental benefits across the board. In one tray alone, we end up saving another $6.39 in postage. Now, you look at that and say, yes, maybe that's pale in comparison to the $700 that Sean was talking about, but think of that as like guaranteed money, right? Proving the address. I don't know if people are going to respond with those pieces once they arrive, but I know what I did for postage. I'm helping the postage here, and I'm also improving delivery. The better I can sort that mail, the less it's touched by human hands, the more automated, the better zip plus 4. Everybody wins on a situation like that. So Compliance Plus took us into a whole new level from a pre-sort benefit.
And that's so, Chris. That's pretty compelling. A pretty compelling story, both for our customer, for those of you on the phone to tell, but also for you guys to be able to share back to your customers about why they should be mailing with you.
And think about, as you're on the screen here for one last thing, Sean, back to the leapfrogging the competition, right? Sometimes this is the part that tips it, folks, right? Everyone's looking at postage numbers like, hey, how come you're all of a sudden getting my postage down a little bit lower than before? I didn't know that the postage rates changed. No, I'm just a little bit savvier than the other guy down the block, and I'm helping you, customer, to make sure that every mail piece counts.
Right, and that's exactly the point. So real quick here, as we move into the last slide, of course, everyone wants to know, okay, this sounds great, but what's the investment? Certainly there's a huge payback here, but what do you guys got to do to make that happen, which is the last slide we have here. So as you folks are starting to think in your heads and you have some questions, again, use that chat area or the questions area on the right-hand side. I see a couple have already come in, but start putting them in there so Chris and I can get your questions answered here while we're on the phone. So the investment here is pretty straightforward. And again, we want you to think of this as an upgrade to your current NCOA process. So when we sat down and said, okay, how do we pull this off for folks, and how are we going to make it something that makes sense for them? We really looked at what was our customers' usage, and we put together a bundle and a price that covers the vast majority of our customer base, right? So most of you on the phone are going to fit into that $49.95 a year tier. That again, it replaces your $20.95 a year FSP subscription. You're able to do that. For those of you that do have really large quantities going out that may not be covered by that, your account manager can help you out there and come up and give you some pricing that's applicable to you. But based on that price, we also wanted to recognize that those of you that are willing to adopt early, right, and are willing to join us and pre-order this prior to the launch, which is anticipated for September 13th. On the 13th, we'll release a mail manager update that will have access to the service. And for those of you that have placed the order and have pre-ordered and said, I want this, we're going to give you a first-year price that's at $42.95, which is a pretty substantial savings. There's also the ability to get that down just a little bit further because, again, this is an upgrade to your current NCOA process. So what you can do is effectively get credit for, you've already paid us for your NCOA processing through what your next subscription renewal date is. We're going to credit that amount that's unused for NCOA going forward back against this upgrade and take that to take that price down just a little bit further. Of course, I can't quote exactly what that is because that is specific to what your current renewal date is, but your account manager can help you unpack that. So, and so how do you get started with this, right? You can contact your account manager. That's what they're there for. If you're not sure who that is, or you've got some other general questions, certainly you can email the marketing team. You see our email address there. You can give us a call. However you want to get a hold of us, we're ready to help you get started with this. And so with that, let me bring in Andy Klingenberger, who is our Manager of Marketing Communications here and has been monitoring the questions as they've come in. And Andy, I think we've got a couple of questions here for you to throw out to Chris and I.
We certainly do. The first one I've got is, what does the USPS think about a service like Compliance Plus that uses both their data and industry data?
Okay, that's a great question. So I'll take that one. This is Chris. So let's take a look at Compliance Plus, and you can see it on the screen here. It begins with CAS certified software, and that's really important. So right off the bat, you're already using something that complies with the Postal Service's Domestic Mail Manual. And it ends with N2A Link. Again, an approved USPS move update methodology. So it's what we do in between, folks, that really enhances and goes beyond what compliance software is going to be able to do. But because we begin and we end with postal solutions, that's what helps the Postal Service feel good about this. They know they're going to get good results, and it's also going to make it easier for you from your postage statement. You're still going to see the checkbox on the N2A link on your postage statement, just like you've been doing before. You still got your CAS certificate 3553.
So, Chris, I went back here a couple of slides to pull up the pyramid, your pyramid, right? Yeah. And so, I think that's a really smart question, and the answer to this is the Postal Service loves this because this is better delivery, makes their life easier too, And the reason, you mentioned it's sandwiched in between. So effectively what happens here is the CAS process happens, then we step outside the pyramid a little bit to use industry source data to get to a little bit better result before we step back into the pyramid at the NCOA step.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, if you can imagine between the suite link and the NCOA link, if I somehow stretch that pyramid up, make a gap and put in the strategically aligned industry provided data, that's what Compliance Plus is doing. So I'm maximizing the address quality stack by going beyond USPS compliant and making it enhanced with a Compliant Plus series of postal and industry provided solutions.
Great. Andy, what else you got for us?
Yep. Next question I have is, what's the turnaround time on running a job through Compliance Plus as opposed to NCOA?
Yeah, great question. So this is one that we anticipated and we spent a fair amount of time with as we were building this. The short answer to your question is it's going to be negligible. We know that you rely on the quick turnaround times you get from us to keep production moving. You're used to, in typical times, seeing these things back in a couple of minutes. You won't see any noticeable change in processing time. As we bounce it around here, it's going to come in, it's going to hit a couple of different services here and spit back out in pretty similar timing to what you're used to.
All right, next question we have is this a service that you have to send the file via internet, or can the processes be set up to run locally?
So good question. So because we're using some industry source data sets that are not allowed to be redistributed, this cannot be run locally. So some people do have an NCOA license where they license an NCOA module from us that's able to process the data, and then they license typically the 18-month data from the United States Postal Service. But these industry data sources are not allowed to be redistributed. They sit here in our data center in Rochester, and we're able to leverage them in that way for you.
Okay. Next, someone asked, if I move to Compliance Plus, can I still use NCOA link?
Another good question. So this was another one that came up a little bit at our user conference here in Rochester. That's the second shameless plug for that. So the way that we're encouraging people to think about this is there's no reason not to run these additional services and to really think about replacing your NCOA subscription with a Compliance Plus subscription. At some point, though it's not available now, we may allow you to, against your Compliance Plus subscription, skip the industry steps, skip ARS and PCOA, and run NCOA only. That's not there today. If you really felt like that's something you need to do, you would need to either keep your NCOA subscription alive, or if it's kind of a rare one-off thing, run a standalone NCOA job through, using prepaid credits or something like that. But really, for the most part, as we talk to people and people come to understand and they help their customers understand the value of this, people are pretty comfortable running all the services straight through.
All right, so as a mail manager user who's already put my money down, since we'll be using the quote-unquote advanced BCC CAS engine, will there be any reason to CAS using Mail Manager?
That's a great question. I'm going to take that one. So if you're a Mail Manager user, that base Mail Manager with the add-on options, not the Mail Manager full service product, you're going to still want to run it through the CAS certified engine that you have locally there with you, and hopefully you're keeping that data up to date as well. And here's why. That's a postal address assignment engine. As Sean mentioned earlier, what we've applied with Compliance Plus is the BCC CAS certified engine, which is a little bit different. Now, both are CAS certified, but the Post Service takes sort of a conservative approach for address quality, but it's a little bit of a different approach. All CAS certified products are not the same. Each one's maybe a little bit different, specializing in different types of addresses. By running through two CAS certified products, the Postal API can pick up a few addresses maybe that we're not catching. We pick up ones that they can't catch. The end result is you're going to get more zip+4 from two different engines. We call that, super casting a file and stuff like that. That will really go to your favor. And so you're still going to want to run it first through the CAS certified address engine locally, and then run it through Compliance Plus, just like you're doing with your NCOA link today. Sean mentioned a couple of times, in my mind, that's exactly how I view this, folks. it's the same steps that you're doing today, except instead of just NCOA to be compliant, you're doing NCOA link with Compliance Plus, and you're getting all that cumulative benefit of 2 CAS certified engines and the strategically tuned single pass process that we put together.
All right. We got a couple more questions. Is Compliance Plus available via Taskmaster? And if so, how is the process different if submitting via Taskmaster?
Great question. So the short answer is yes, it's available through Taskmaster. You will have to update your Taskmaster script. So here's how we're going to handle that. So for a mail manager user that's not using Taskmaster, when you go into the DMS wizard, the very first screen in the DMS wizard after you install the September 13th update, alongside NCOA, below that, you will see a radial button for Compliance Plus. And so to submit a Compliance Plus job, instead of selecting NCOA, you're going to select Compliance Plus and then advance through the wizard as normal. For Taskmaster users, that does mean that you'll have to make some quick modifications to your scripts to change what you select there. And so the way that we're going to allow for that is I mentioned upgrading your NCOA subscription to Compliance Plus, which does mean that your NCOA subscription is going to be turned off. But we do know that, of course, you might need some time to update those Taskmaster scripts. So when you talk to your account manager and they process the upgrade for you, what they're going to do is they're actually going to leave, by default, your NCOA subscription available for a week, which should give you time to make those quick updates to the Taskmaster scripts. If you're not sure how to do that, there's some self-service materials on the website. Customer support is able to help you remember how to do that. Or, of course, if you don't want to do it our professional services team can make some of those updates. If you feel like you need more than a week to make those updates, that's something you can just work out with your account manager, because, of course, as great as all this is and is going to have a huge benefit for everybody who takes advantage of it, you certainly can't have production stop. So that's the purpose of leaving that available for a little bit, to give you the opportunity to update your Taskmaster scripts. And again, if you need help, we're here. And if you need more than a week, just talk to your account manager and we'll sort it out.
All right. I think we have 1 or 2 more questions. Somebody wants to know, do we still have to have PAFs filled out?
Yes, I'll take that one. Yeah, I've been asked that many times. Process acknowledgement forms are still required. Postal Service is not going to get rid of those. But the good news is that with Compliance Plus, if you're a full service user right now, if you're doing full service NCOA link with us, none of your PAFs have to change. They're still going to be exactly the same. The only time that you'd have to maybe reduce some PAFs is if you've got the 18-month NCOA link flat rate subscription with us, or you're doing an 18-month NCOA link, you're going to need to switch to 48-month PAFs. That would be the only change. But most of you, what we find is, and what we're anticipating, most of you are probably already doing FSP for your NCOA link. You won't see any change to your PAFs. It'll just be exactly as Sean said before, it's just upgrading your current NCOA link subscription.
Yep. So in summary, because this is Compliance Plus, but compliance is still part of it. Since NCOA is part of the chain, certainly the PAFs need to be there. Yeah. But fortunately, for those of you that are using FSP, your PAFs effectively transfer over without having to touch them. Anybody who might be upgrading from LSP, as Chris mentions, because you're now going to be using the FSP service, will need to refresh those PAFs.
Correct.
All right, next we have, will the return codes be the same, or will more be added?
So the NCOA return codes remain the same, and the PCOA does have its own set of return codes that you'll see in some of the reports get returned. At some point in the less distant future, we'll add some consolidated reporting, but for now, you'll see both the NCOA return codes and the PCOA return codes in 2 separate files. The NCOA return codes, again, stay the same. PCOA's got its own set of return codes that come back along with definitions about what those mean.
All right, and I think this is the last one, unless there are any last-minute questions. Will you be able to purchase prepaid credits for Compliance Plus?
No prepaid credits. This is a subscription-only service. It really is the most cost-effective way for us to offer the service to everybody. I mentioned when we looked at the pricing screen that we spent a lot of time and looked at how do we make this palatable for as many customers as possible at a pretty attractive price. And when we look at the costs involved in all the individual services we're running in there. The best way, again, just the best way for us to offer this in a cost-effective manner to everybody is to make it available at that subscription. And it looks like sorry, just one more question rolled in. So what's the cost after year one? So good question. So let me just back up one quick slide. So this is an annual subscription similar to your the way your NCOA subscription works. So the baseline price for it is $49.95 a year, which would be your year 2 and beyond price. You're able to realize some discounts here in the first year if you commit to a pre-order prior to our September 13th launch date. You'll save yourself some money in the first year, plus you'll get some credit back from your existing subscription. But then your ongoing renewal for this would be $49.95 instead of the $20.95 that most people are paying today.
I think that's the last one.
Okay.
All right.
So thank you, everybody, for certainly for taking the time out of your day to attend the webinar. I know it's tough to step away during the middle of the day. Thank you for taking the time to consider this upgrade. We think it's a huge benefit to you, a huge benefit to your customers. And then sort of finally, and probably most importantly, thank you for your business. We really do appreciate the trust that everybody places in us. We know what Mail Manager means to your business, and so that means a lot to us. So with that, I'll remind you how to get in touch with us. It's up on the screen. Call your account manager, call support, email marketing. We're happy to jump in and help however we can. Chris, let me give you the final word.
All right, thanks, Sean. Thanks, everyone, for attending today. Again, thank you for your business. We know that there's a lot of opportunities out there, and you're constantly looking for ways to, leapfrog the competition, add value to your customers. We think that Compliance Plus is going to be one way for you to be able to take the game to the next level. So, again, thank you for your business and your time. And if you've got any questions, visit our webpage, call us, send us an email. Let us know, how can we help? And so I wish you all a great afternoon and talk to you soon.